Welcome into the post-game show presented by Q30 TV. I'm Connor Ullathorne alongside Joe LoGrippo and Mike Dalton. Guys, I love the shirts tonight.
Yeah, I know. We somehow matched all three of us, and we didn't even plan it.
We didn't plan it, but I think we look pretty good.
Oh, yeah,
I do think we look excellent tonight, and we're going to jump right in, and we just had the Princeton and the Quinnipiac game from the Hobie Baker Arena. Let's take the highlight of the game right now. All right, just said it, Quinnipiac and Princeton from the Hobie Baker Arena. Game 3, the final and third game in the ECAC Hockey Quarterfinals, and we're going to start in the second period. Scoreless game, but joke, Sarah Fillier, she'd change that.
She did, and I thought she was going to make a pass back to the point, and I think Quinnipiac defenders thought that as well, but she was able to take advantage and get the scoring started.
And after that, 1-0 heading into the third period, and on the power play, Claire Thompson, Mike.
Yeah, just a really good look at the net. I like the decision she made, and the rest of the team does clearly.
2-0 Princeton now, and with a little time left, Taylor Gerard, she created a goal here, Joe.
Check out the dangles, creating space by herself, getting Quinnipiac on the board, just what they needed.
Yeah, big dangle from the first-year player, and now it's 2-1. Abby Ives to the bench, and Mike Sarev Kutugabu ties the game up here.
Yeah, her 16th goal of the year. She had 15 goals in her first 3 years. Quite a way to end her 4 years here.
All right, we're going to head to overtime, take a full period of play, but here a 3-on-1, Joe, and what would happen out of this result?
Exactly, a 3-on-1. The Princeton Tigers are moving on to the semifinal. Abby Ives played brilliantly all game long, but she really could not do much about that. The Tigers win 3-2.
Yeah, 3-2. They'll take on Clarkson up at Lake Placid, guys. But I want to hear your first general thoughts on the games. Joe, what do you think?
Like I said just before, Abby Ives played absolutely out of her mind. She really did the past 2 games, kept Quinnipiac in the game. The offense, stalled out at sometimes. They scored with only a few minutes left in the third period today. But Abby Ives really played well. I know it was her final game, probably of her college career, and really kudos to her. She really did a great job in the playoffs.
Mike, any first thoughts?
Honestly, Connor, you and I were there after game 1, and the Bobcats did not play well. I honestly said that first period was the worst first period I have ever seen the Bobcats play in my 3 years of covering this team as a beat reporter. And it was. I was being just 100% upfront with everyone. But boy, was I wrong. I did not think that the Bobcats were going to win game 2. They end up winning game 2, coming back from down a goal, and they do it again today. So a very valiant effort by this Bobcat team, just not the results they wanted.
Yeah, definitely. I know that Joe just mentioned Abby Ives on her final game, but what's been your kind of idea on her season reflection, season performance in this last game?
Honestly, I think she's just left it all out there, Connor. I mean, Abby Ives, she has meant so much to this program, and she was their #1 goaltender for the last 3 years of her collegiate career here, and she really just wanted to leave it all out on the ice. And she even said it after senior day against Brown that they finally kind of got this program back to where they wanted to be, because they were a 20-win season going into her first year, and then all of a sudden the Bobcats just kind of went down a little bit, and then they had their worst season in her junior year, just going 12, 18, and 6, and now they're a 20-win team again. So they're really starting to kind of get back to where they want to be, and that is their 2015-16 team, where they ended up winning the ECAC tournament entirely.
Yeah, if we look at the other side for Princeton now, it was Rachel McQuigg versus Stephanie Neepy, and Neepy played the first 2 games of the series against Quinnipiac, got the win and the loss, and then today, the coach for Princeton actually ended up going with McQuigg in the final game. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Just switching up the goalies, what do you think that means?
It was definitely interesting. I know as soon as we saw McQuigg come out on the ice, we were like, whoa, that's a goalie change, and that's the backup in your do or die game. It's definitely a gutsy call. I'm not sure if there were any motives behind it, but she played really well today and really helped Princeton stay in the game. They were both her and Abby Ives were trading shots. So I mean, I guess it paid off in the end for Princeton.
Definitely looked like it. Mike, what do you think?
Well, the one thing that the Bobcats don't really have a lot of depth in is goaltending. I mean, Abby Ives started just about every single game this year. Logan Andrews only started 3 games this year. 2 of them were against Sacred Heart, a team out of conference, so the game really didn't have that much substance to it. And then she got the start against Union earlier on in November. So that is a position where the Bobcats really don't have much depth. and Princeton does. McQuigg and Neatby have kind of been getting some play time back and forth, and so I think that just means that Karen Morey, head coach of Princeton, just has all the faith in the world with her goaltenders. And that's actually a good thing to have, especially in the postseason, because if your goaltender doesn't play well, guess what? Now you can throw in the other one and be just as confident in her.
Right, exactly. And Quinnipiac didn't have that luxury, especially this time around, only trusting Abby Ives mostly. But we're going to move on to another aspect of the game that really took advantage. It was in faceoff. So Princeton won faceoff 65-26, which is a massive spree. And I know Cass Turner told us, Mike and Joe, that after the last weekend in the regular series, they were getting completely outplayed at the faceoff dot. And she said, that's something we got to be better. It clearly didn't show today. So how does that impact the game?
Well, I think that, Lexi Agia, with her being out in the final weekend, just getting some rest, that really affected the team in the faceoff dot. And I think that they were definitely expecting her to just kind of come in and do well in the faceoff dot. Well, that didn't happen. And really, the Bobcats have kind of struggled all year, aside from Agia being well in the faceoff dot. And so that against a team like Princeton, where, they really build off of speed and just being able to just straight out skate you in games, that can really be a killer, because if you lose an offensive faceoff, well, guess what? Now they got a puck. They got all the momentum going forward because they got plenty of ice to work with.
Referencing back that press conference with Cass Turner, she mentioned to us that they haven't been as winning faceoffs as often as they wanted to, and they wanted to get back in a groove. It didn't seem like they ever got back into that groove, and you wonder if maybe Alexi Agia was, I don't know, rusty maybe.
Yeah, she could have been, really.
So. And then you wonder if they won more faceoffs, could the outcome of the game, series have changed? So there's a lot of question marks around that, and definitely something that they didn't do well.
Yeah, definitely a lot of question marks in that game, but I know that we saw a lot of poor discipline on both sides, and there were 14 total penalties in that game, 9 committed by Quinnipiac. And discipline just in the game in general, and Cass Turner usually says, hey, we got a very disciplined team. How do you go from having one of the most disciplined teams in the ECAC hockey to having 9 penalties against you?
Well, one thing that Cass talked about after game 1, Connor, you were there, was just mental toughness. And I think they really lacked mental toughness today, and it showed, because this is a very disciplined team. They had the least amount of penalty minutes in the entire ECAC hockey league throughout the regular season. So for them to commit 9 penalties like that, where they would sometimes go 9 or 10 games committing the same number of penalties they did tonight, that just really kind of, shows that I don't think they were really ready to really take on a team like Princeton in a game of this magnitude.
Yeah, you wonder if maybe they were pressing a little bit because they felt like it obviously was a must-win game, and maybe they felt like they were underdogs, so they had to play up to their opponent, and they ended up getting pretty sloppy with it and ended up in the box a bunch of times.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to contain that first line. Maggie Connors, Carly Bullock, and Sarah Philly. It's one of the best lines in all of ECAC hockey. Mm-hmm. So maybe playing them physical and keeping tight to bodies is probably what they had coming in. Just Princeton's just that fast that you get a quick stick in there and it goes on the skate and you get a tripping penalty or a hook right there.
Yeah, and sometimes it's tough to keep your emotions, especially in bigger games now, where it's like, all right, you got to kind of flip the switch and you can't really let anybody get into your head or anything like that. And so the Bobcats are a very, calm and collected team for the most part. But, when they get a little scrappy, I think that's when they go away from their game and they just kind of become undisciplined.
Yeah, we had some of the most intense games of the series, I believe. We had 2 games today because Clarkson swept and Cornell swept. But the 2 biggest games today was obviously Princeton and Quinnipiac went to double overtime. Harvard and Yale went to triple overtime. Harvard would take that game 4-3. They're moving on to play Cornell. Guys, is it just the level of competition we have in ECAC hockey now, or is this something we should just keep expecting?
Oh, it's the level of ECAC hockey competition, especially this year. I mean, consistently in the USCHO.com polls, there have been 4 ECAC hockey teams in it consistently, the Bobcats being one of them for the final few weeks in the regular season. And it really just shows the amount of competition. I mean, even Harvard was still getting votes after they were out of the top 10 for a couple weeks, and they will probably be back in the top 10 this week since they're moving on to the semifinals for the ECAC tournament. But yeah, it really does show. I mean, Cornell's been the number 1 team in the nation pretty much all season. Princeton has been in the top 5 constantly. So it just makes a bunch of sense that I do think that someone in the ECAC Hockey Conference is going to win the national championship this year.
Yeah, I too think that it's also the competition in the ECAC. But a little bit of a side note, you also do have to wonder, are the teams that went into double overtime, triple overtime, and then advanced to the next round, are they going to be impacted? Are they going to be tired or sluggish at all? Because Yale and Harvard basically played 2 games in one day. So you really wonder if that will have an impact on them at all going
Not
forward.
to mention the game before for both Quinnipiac and Harvard and Yale and Princeton. They all went to overtime the day before. So I think players are more just going to be mentally tired rather than, like we just mentioned, mentally tired versus physically tired. They got a whole week off before going to Lake Placid, but really just mentally tired, and that mental toughness is going to really come into play during the ECAC hockey playoffs up in Lake Placid. But speaking of Lake Placid, we got 2 more games coming up in the series. Harvard versus Cornell. Guys, who you got for that game?
I got Cornell. I don't think I think it's a no-brainer personally. Cornell's the best team in the nation. They're going to be going to the Frozen Four, and just being ECAC hockey champions just puts a cherry on top.
Yeah, I also got Cornell. You know, they're fast. They're great in all aspects of the game, and there's really no team I can see competing with them, so I'm going to go with Cornell as well.
Yeah, 1 loss for Cornell all year. I'm taking them as well. The second game, Clarkson versus Princeton. Guys, we just saw Clarkson play 3 games against Quinnipiac. We saw Clarkson sweep Colgate this weekend. Who do you have for that, Joe?
I got the Princeton Tigers. I know that they kind of underplayed this weekend against Quinnipiac, but I think they're going to be able to pick it back up and carry momentum of their crazy win today and advance.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason the Bobcats have had a good season is because they technically went undefeated against Clarkson this year. They beat them the second time around on the road, and then they tied them back at home over Thanksgiving break. And I think the Bobcats are going to really show that the Clarkson Golden Knights are a beatable team, and I think Princeton thinks that too, because as long as you are able to shut down most of Clarkson's goal scorers, Elizabeth Jaguar, Gabrielle David, all those players, you got a very good chance of winning, because other than that, they don't really have the best defense. And Cornell has the best defense. They have 2 of the top defensemen in the country. Lindsey Browning, I think her goals against average was under a goal, which is insanity. So I think Cornell has a very good chance of beating everybody, but I think Clarkson's going to lose to Princeton, and Princeton's going to give Cornell a run for their money.
I actually think it's going to be Clarkson heading to the final. Clarkson's made it every year since 2017. I believe they won this every year since 2017. So I'm going to be taking the champions, the reigning champions in this one, just back to back to back. They've been so dominant. They've had one of the best goaltender plays with Marie Coulombe. She's had 120 goals against average this year, so I'm not betting against that anytime soon. But that's all it's going to be for us from the post-game show. Connor Ullathorne, Joe LoGrippo, and Mike Dalton, thank you for tuning in to our content all year, and we'll see you next time on Q30 Sports.